Welcome to the Possibility Action Network podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Middleton, aka Possibility Man. We are committed to bringing you guests who strive to better people's lives and serve as a force for good in the world. Our guest today is Clifford B. Starks Jr. He is a kinesiology major, a graduate from Arizona State University. He began his career as a personal trainer and then became a UFC fighter. Today, he is an executive and leadership coach and an entrepreneur. He's the founder of Stark, Competitive Edge Specialist. Clifford Starks, welcome to the show today.
Hey, Stephen, I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Okay, look, I got a ton of questions to ask you. I am so excited. But look, just a quick note to our viewers and our listeners, your support matters. Follow, like, and share this podcast wherever you find it. Clifford, hey, where did you grow up in the United States?
I was actually mostly in Phoenix, Arizona. So I was born in Cali, but I've been in Phoenix since I was 7.
Oh, so that explains you choosing Arizona State to go to school.
Yes.
Do you
Yeah.
recall what attracted you to Arizona State?
I loved how competitive their wrestling team was.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't know it at the time, but they were one of the best programs for kinesiology.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah, it was a double win for me in that aspect. And I'm like, all right, let's see what I can do and let's see how I can perform.
Uh-huh. So I know that you had an interest in athletics, but you mentioned you went there to Arizona State
Mhm.
to get involved with wrestling. So when did you start your wrestling career?
Yeah, so I actually started in high school.
Huh?
Um, yeah, I started very late actually. So, and then when I went to ASU, I did go to ASU for personal training specifically,
Okay.
but the wrestling team, like they were both, it was just too perfect.
Oh,
Let me explain how I go through life. The way I go through life is I have one thing I'm going after, and I learn a lot of lessons along the way. So my
mm.
number one thing was I want to be the best personal trainer that I could be. And I also knew, oh wow, they have an amazing wrestling program. I'm gonna give this a try and see how I do. I got tossed around like a kid for a good 3 months. Uh, but I ended up going with the paces with everybody else. I
That's
say it takes
fantastic.
3 months for you to learn something.
That's fantastic. So you're telling me that you did not begin wrestling like as a sophomore or in high school. You started late. What does that mean?
Yeah, so I technically started my freshman year in high school, and I
Uh-huh.
say I started late because a lot of these kids are starting at 5, 6, and 7.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, yeah. So when I finally started, I had a bunch of people who had been starting a lot earlier than I had,
Uh-huh.
and it was great for me. It was a great learning experience to go through that process and learn the things I learned as I went through it.
Got it. Were you interested in any of the other sports, as a high schooler?
Yeah, yeah. So I was actually in track and field, so I threw the shot put, and I also was a football player, and I was a two-time state champion in the shot put, and I also was an All-American in football.
Wow. So athletics then is kind of was kind of in you at an early age.
My dad helped put it in me, I will say,
Okay.
because I mowed a lot of lawns to get this. Like it was a $500 bird, and I laugh to this day knowing like why would I want a $500 bird? But that's what I wanted. I wanted a $500 bird, so I ended up mowing a lot of lawns
Uh-huh.
that year to get that bird.
Uh,
And I got really, really strong from mowing so many lawns. And so
okay.
that did help with my athletic paralysis.
I see. Hey, look, I know that you got involved with martial arts along the way. At what point did the martial arts attract you?
it it's funny because it was always in me.
Okay.
Now, this is gonna be a really, really weird story, so hopefully everyone's able to connect the dots, and if not, reach out to me. So my biological dad left when I was 4 years old, right? And I remember he wasn't going to come back. Like dad, I distinctively remember I was very good at reading energy at the time. I'm 39 years old. We get on a phone call. He calls me up. right? And he wants to just he basically wanted to apologize for what he did and where he was. And what was so interesting is he goes, I remember you always used to love Bruce Lee. Now this is as a 4-year-old kid. So I think it was something that was really in me from the beginning. The
Mhm.
martial arts and understanding them and respecting them, and I've learned deeper principles and philosophies and richness as I've gone through the process.
Yeah,
But I always had a fascination with it.
I got you. Yeah, look, you've mentioned a couple of things that I just can't pass up. You
Yeah.
mentioned that you were able to read energy at an early age. What do
Hmm.
you mean by that? And can you enlarge upon that for us?
Yeah, yeah. So I thought it was something we could all do, but I quickly learned that some people get it and some people don't as much. We are energy, and we are presenting our energy all the time.
Yeah.
Some people are very good at presenting their energy, and some people not so good at presenting their energy. And so, for instance, when you say someone's toxic, someone doesn't feel comfortable, um, I don't really look at people as good or bad. I just look at them as energy sources. So you look at a battery, and a battery takes both the positive and the negative for it to be an effective battery. And what I really learned going through my journey is I'm not looking to push things away. I'm just looking to attract the things that I need to attract to be the best me that I can be. And
Uh-huh.
I feel like we're all kind of going through that process trying to figure it out, and you can be taught how to look for signs. Like we all read energy to an extent, but we never really take the time to really think about it like, this person drains me. But ask the question, why does this person drain you? Instead of, oh, I know why. It's this, this, and this. And it's like, is it really that simple? Go through the layers and truly understand that.
Yeah, that's a powerful insight. So, where do you think that insight for you, that is reading energy, came from?
I don't know the answer to that. Um, I do know that I have a passion for loving people.
Mhm.
And in that passion for loving people, it's helped me become very, very curious and understand people. And in understanding people, I didn't know it at the time, but my understanding people makes others want to understand me.
Mm,
And it wasn't something that I was intentionally practicing. I was just practicing being that way. And
yeah.
I've gotten better at practicing being that way as I've gotten older. But it's ultimately people become what you allow them to become.
Mhm.
And
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's awesome. And pardon me for cutting you off. Is there more that you want
oh
to
no,
say?
you're good.
Yeah. Well, we'll look. I know I got to bring you back now because I want to probe that more later. But I want to.
Yeah.
Now, you also mentioned your father, your biological father, visiting with you and apologizing. Was it easy, or did you need to forgive him? If so, yeah, did you need to forgive him?
Yeah, that's a good question. No, I didn't. So I've been in my personal development for a long, long time. And ultimately, one thing that I always did was how can I do and be the best that I can do and be the best at. Now I did go through the cycle of um the world's against me, and then I went through the cycle of it's me versus me, and then I went through the cycle of the world works for me.
Hmm.
Now the world, it's me versus the world. That didn't come from him per se. That came from enough people not giving me the love that I felt that I deserved.
Mhm.
And I also look at it as the reason I didn't have that lash out negativity was because I reflect internally more than I do externally.
Yeah.
Most people are looking at the outside world and saying the outside world needs to change for me. And I really look internally
Yeah.
and say, what shifts do I need to make for this to be the reality that I want?
Well, Clifford, that's all. I hear a lot of spiritual understanding coming from you as you speak. And look, what surprises me is that you're a former fighter.
Yeah,
And most people think that the fighter takes hatred and anger, i.e., Mike Tyson, into the ring.
yeah,
But
yeah,
you coming from a place of love and compassion. How do you explain that, brother? I mean, I don't, help me unravel
yeah,
that.
yeah. No, I love that, and I look at me and Mike Tyson are more the same than we are different. Like it's just looking at the context and the timing of things, right? So Mike Tyson was the king of the world, and this was about to be stripped from him. He was, so he lashed out. He lashed out in a place where the entire world got to see him. All they were seeing was a human being a human being, but
Mm,
they happened to see it. And for me, I've been working on my passion muscles, my empathy muscles. I've been working those muscles really, really early on. But think about it. My biological drove away at 4. So the first thing I thought was, okay, you lose things early. That's the way life is. So just be as humbled as you can as you go through the journey, and learn as much as you can as you go through the journey. One thing that I loved about fighting is a competitive aspect. We're both signing a contract in agreement to do the thing that we're getting ready to do. Um, but I think I would have fascinating conversation with Mike Tyson because he went through stages and processes, and people, like, I'll give an example. People ask him a question on something he did when he was 20 at 55.
yeah, yeah,
And he's like, I'm a 55-year-old now. Like, why are you asking me the thing that I did when I was 20 years old? Like, I don't even remember how I was thinking at that time, or what I was thinking, or what was really angering me. And
yeah.
so it's a process we all got to go through, and we have
Right.
cycles.
And that's a powerful insight itself, right? Now, people are looking at someone 30 years ago, and it's
Hmm.
30 years later, it's not the same person, that's for sure. Okay,
Yeah.
so look, you entered into professional fighting, and just help us with some terms now. I've
Hmm.
seen letters like MMA and UFC. For those of us who are not into the fighting sports, what do those letters mean,
Yeah.
and how did you become involved?
Yeah. So MMA means mixed martial arts,
Okay.
and UFC means Ultimate Fighting Championship. And the best way I could equate it, for I know most people know about the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So MMA, fighting in the UFC, it's an organization. Fighting in that organization is like fighting in a football player who's going through high school, going through college, and they finally have that opportunity to play in the NFL.
Okay.
They finally have the opportunity to play in the biggest leagues. So MMA, going into the UFC organization, you've made it. You're playing in the big leagues now.
I see. Okay. I want to dig around into you as a fighter a bit. I want to look at a number of different angles.
Hmm.
I've read some of your blogs and I've checked you out pretty thoroughly. And you've used words such as, and I'm quoting now, the
Hmm.
fighter spirit. What is that?
Yeah. The fighter spirit is being willing to fight for what you want, fighting for your dreams.
Mm,
And what's interesting, I use from fighting to flowing, because fighting has that negative, I gotta do this connotation to most. To me, I love fighting. I love it because it made me who I was.
mm,
And there's a fighter in every single one of us. And sometimes we want to pretend like it's not there and hide it and tell others not to be that way. And it's like, no, you want a fighter inside of you. You
mm,
just want someone to have empathy and love and compassion. Because what happens if the bullies are bigger and badder than you are? Who's going to fend them off? Nobody, if you can't fight them.
mm. Yeah, okay. Each of us has that fightings. Why do you think it's there? If you think that somehow we are endowed with it, why do you think we're endowed with that fighter spirit?
The beauty of choice.
Mm,
So I have this hand, right? And I
yeah,
can choose to throw punches with it. I can also choose to help someone up with it. I
mm,
get a choice.
yeah,
And the other person also gets a choice on, are they going to punch me? Are they going to help me? Are they going to serve me? What are they going to do?
yeah,
The beauty of choice is a scary, scary thing and a very powerful thing all
yeah.
at the same time.
Mm,
And so knowing that we have all of these things, the good, the bad, the light, the dark, and saying, how are you going to show up to the world? How
mm,
are you going to show up? And being willing to accept the consequences of how you show up.
yeah. Yeah, okay. Wow. Just a little bit deeper for me. As you've talked about fighting, I've heard you said, and I'm going to quote you now, and
Hmm.
let me preface it by saying this. You said there is a place, and that's a paraphrase, quote, where the magic is. And as a non-fighter, professionally, I wondered, wow, what did he mean? Where did he draw that from?
Yeah, yeah. The magic is right now, what we're doing presently, having a conversation, being curious with one another, asking questions. When I became an entrepreneur, was very shocking to me is everyone wants the same thing. They want to be seen and they want to be heard. That's it.
Yeah.
But the complexity behind the layers of, well, how am I seen and how am I heard? There's layers behind that. And so the best thing you can absolutely happen is not only to see and hear others, but see and hear yourself.
Mm.
Be a person who's living in the present moment and giving to the present moment.
Uh-huh. Okay. Well, look, I want to go deeper into the fighter spirit to understand some things that I felt as I reviewed you.
Yeah.
And one is your learning. And you're learning, and I'm using learning now in a plural sense,
Hmm.
from fighting. I'm going to throw some things at you, okay?
Hmm.
Will you play this game with me?
Absolutely. Let's
Okay,
play.
so you're learning from my first item about spirituality. That is, from a fight as a fighter, what did you learn about spirituality?
Every time I get inside that cage, I get to learn something about myself. So it's easy for a person to say, I would do this, this, and this. You cannot know until you do the thing. And the thing is sometimes the scariest thing that you do because you know you're getting ready to do it. But when a person steps back and says, I would do this, but this, and this. So no, you didn't do that. And no, you wouldn't do that because you didn't. But when you can step in to your arena, when you can step into it, you get to learn about you and others get to learn about you too.
Mm,
And you can be proud either way. Just have a perspective shift of win, lose, or draw. I
mm,
gave my all, or I didn't give my all. At least you get to know where you stand.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. Along with that, and I'm going to bring this up here because you've talked about fear. Um,
Mm.
so what does it take, Clifford, to get in a ring with someone who has the capacity to take you out?
That's a great question. Um, it takes the ability to be able to weigh your risk and your reward.
Mm,
And I spoke with one of my I consider him a friend, a mentor, and a coach, and we were talking about the difference between risk and the difference between danger. Danger is just a bad thing. Like danger would be like I'm gonna stand in the street and get hit by this car just because. That's dangerous. You're gonna get hurt. Nothing good comes of it. But risk reward, there's a measurement there. And so you're going into a situation saying, I'm gonna go compete. I'm gonna go compete and see who I am. But every time you compete at a higher and higher level, there's a higher and higher reward for competing at that level. Like a Conor McGregor would have never become a Conor McGregor if he didn't step into the arena to compete with those high level fighters. So you can talk all you want, but the beauty about stepping inside is not only am I talking, I'm looking to back up the talk.
yeah. Yeah, that reminds me because you tell a story. I thought it was a compelling story about the first time someone asked you to spar with them. You were unskilled; they were skilled. Can you tell us about that and what you discovered from that experience?
I can tell you two stories to it if you'd like.
Okay, yes, please do.
All right, so he beat the brakes off of me, right? Like I thought fighting was two guys getting into a ring and punching each other. I quickly realized there's levels to this game, and it was one guy hitting a lot of air and the other guy getting punched repeatedly, right? So I went through this process and I'm like, wow, I didn't know I was that off. Now here's where it gets interesting. he ended up he had a coach who could beat him up, right? Who could just the way he spoke about him, he's like, "You think I'm bad? You don't want to go with this guy." And he started telling me stories about how badass he was. And I got a chance to talk with the guy he told me not to go with. And the reason I'm purposely not saying names because I don't like throwing people under the bus. That's just not the game that I play. Um, but the way he spoke, I'm like, okay, I really know he knows his stuff. Well, fast forward, that guy, um, I found out he was a bully. He ended up bullying people, and he would go with people who were lower skill than him. And he had a lot of fun going with people who were lower skill than him. Um, well, one day it was we had a chance to spar because he had severely bullied one of the guys that I had been training, and I didn't like it. Now, this is a year later. This is a year later. So I had a year under my belt of training, going through the reps, going through the motions, and going through my process. And I remember him saying, like, so what percentage are we going to spar at? And I said, you know what? I'm getting ready for a fight. So let's go 95, close to 100%. Let's just, no, we're not going to pull any punches. Let's go to work. And he goes, oh, we're playing for keeps. I'm like, yeah, we're playing for keeps. And we went through the process. And in my head, I didn't know what was going to happen. And I didn't care. I stand for what I stand for. This guy might have beat the brakes off me because he was that same guy that the other boxer was telling me, don't go with this guy. He will mess you up. But I didn't care. I stand for my truth. And so that's what I did. I stood for it and let the chips fall where they may. So we get into the cage and I end up hitting him to the body, and I went to hit him with a hook to the head, and he fell over before I even hit him with the headshot. And he starts coughing, and he's telling me like, "Oh man, I ate a muffin, like something. I can't go with you right now. I can't go with you right now." And I realized how much better I had gotten in a year's time because I put in the reps. I'm willing to put in the reps. But I also realize I'm going to stand for what I stand for regardless of what happens. I don't care what happens. You can beat the brakes off of me if all you want. But I'm not going to stand there and let people bully people unnecessarily. And that's what happened. So yeah, it was a funny story because there were two transitions in
Yeah,
there.
that's a great story. And that does that show up in your coaching? And when you coach other people, that is
Big
that
time.
principle that you stand by. Okay.
Yeah,
All
big time.
right. Okay. Good. Good. Okay. So what have you learned about resilience?
I have learned that um Dorian Yates actually mentioned this, which was really cool. So he talks about if you take a piece of sandpaper and you kind of rub that sandpaper on your hand day in and day out, you start callousing and getting thicker, and you can rub it longer and more. But if you just go to town with the sandpaper nonstop for a day, your hand ends up bloody and beaten, and you've done too much. So resilience, just like anything, it's about time and timing. Like
Mhm.
how much, because you can be dangerously resilient. If you were to take a young Mike Tyson and you put him in a ring with a killer, you've essentially just gotten rid of one of the baddest men on the planet
Mhm.
because you have conditioned his mind to say he's not good enough.
Mhm.
But he had Customato, who took him through a process and tailored him and sharpened him and communicated to him.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you said that because as I studied you and as you share and blog, because you're all over the place, some good
Mhm.
stuff, by the way.
Thank you.
So it's like you are leading us to say it's possible for you to be transformed. So, what have you learned about transformation and why do you feel this way that people can actually change and grow and become better?
Man, that hits me deep.
Mm,
So When my biological left, it reminded me that people who are supposed to be there can leave. Uh, when my mom remarried to the man I call dad to this day, it reminded me that people who don't have to be there can come into your life and stay. I remember as a 5-year-old kid, my grandfather passed away, and it scared me because I got to see him lying lifeless in a coffin. And so I got to this process of people who are supposed to be there are going to leave. People who don't have to be there can stay, and we're all going to die. And so I took that and I really lived with that fully. And I've seen the transformation that people can have when you have the right amount of patience for them. I think too often we try and push people too much, and we're pushing them from our perspective and not their perspective. I feel people need to be motivated. When a person is motivated, they can do anything, anything. They need the right process, they need the right skills, but motivation is the start, not the finish, but it is the start because it builds momentum. And with momentum, builds confidence. And with confidence, builds skill sets. And with skill sets, builds leverage.
Wow. Okay. Well said, sir.
Thank you.
You've also done, blogging and writing around finding your purpose. So I want to ask this question in two parts. First, how did you find your purpose? And clearly your purpose goes way beyond being a fighter. How did you
Mhm.
find your purpose? And how do you try to get others to discover their purpose?
I don't know why this comes to mind. I live on purpose. Like I wasn't trying to find anything. I didn't have a quiz that I took. I wasn't reading anything. I'm just living. I'm living the life that I want to live and enjoy living the life that I want to live. Now, what was interesting to me is when I started asking deep enough questions, I really quickly realized that people were only living in the belief systems that they knew. See, I know my belief system can always be changed and stretched and grown into something new. You can change and grow and stretch my perspective. And the craziest thing, because I wanted to serve 1 billion people, but I didn't know in serving them, I am also serving myself. When I transform them, they are transforming me. It is a two-way process. Now, that's not something that I knew before because before it was, all right, I'm overweight. Now I got to lose the weight. Yes, I lost it. Now I'm going to train other people how to do the same thing. Oh, crap. That's harder than me doing it because I'm not doing it myself. I'm doing it for them. So I had to learn their languages, learn their thought patterns, learn their thinking. And I'm like, okay. And then I got better at doing that. And then I got better at teaching others how to do the same thing that I was doing. And I realized like leadership is an ever growing game. It never
Yeah,
stops.
yeah. I tell you, Clifford, you're blowing me away by the depth of what you're sharing. So I'm curious, where's this coming from? I mean, where's it, yes, where's it coming from? You're
Yeah.
drawing this, I'm hearing wisdom talk here. I'm
Mhm.
asking you, where is it coming from as you see it?
It's all of us. It's everybody. Everyone I connect with. So every time I get to speak to someone, I speak with them with a complete curiosity and complete space. And in doing so, I take something from them. And so they allow me to go deeper than I could if I were to do it by myself.
Uh-huh.
We are a community. And sometimes we need those reminders because when we're in fear, when we're in lack, it can get really ugly really fast. So I make sure to keep people in light and inspired so that they can share freely and stand strong on their belief systems.
Yeah, like I guess we're back to that energy that you talked about
Yeah,
before. We're all energy, so
yeah.
that's amazing. I want to quote you again, and I
Hmm.
want you to expound upon it. See, I looked
Yeah,
into you, sir.
yeah.
You said, and I'm quoting now. You said a habit that will change. Now, I think you spoke about it or blogged about it. I don't know which,
Mhm.
but you offered a habit that will change your life, our lives forever. Now, that's a bold statement. If you can recall this habit, would you share it with us?
The greatest habit I feel is the one that you can, one is communication,
Uh,
the ability to communicate effectively. Another habit is the habit of discipline. When you can stay disciplined long enough to learn the lessons that you need to learn, you will create whatever you want to create in your
Oh,
reality, which is awesome.
that's awesome indeed. Now,
Yeah.
you mentioned create, so I'm going to take you to something else that you've talked about in that
Hmm.
connection, and that is, I was surprised, by the way. Look, I don't know a lot of fighters, so I can't say it. But
Yeah.
you blogged about the law of attraction. So,
Hmm.
what is that to you?
The law of attraction to me is like a magnet and a refrigerator. Um, if you put a magnet on a refrigerator, it will attract each other. Um, it's not just think it and it will happen, because just like a magnet and a refrigerator, if they're not next to each other, they will not be able to connect to each other. So life is about going out, experiencing it, feeling it, understanding, knowing what works for you, knowing what doesn't work for you, and reflecting on it all too. Just saying like, okay, what's working, what isn't working. What's so interesting when I talk about inspiration, a person's soul on fire, people want to be around that.
Mm,
They're gonna want to be around that. And that's all the law of attraction really, really is like, how do I how do I bring my soul to life fully? How do I do that fully? And it's hard for people because we're constantly worried, or we're constantly thinking about like, okay, what problem are we going to watch today? What's going on? What do I need to fix? Fix, 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 fix. There was a saying, and I can't remember who said it, but I loved it. He said, instead of fixing problems, what if we dissolved the problem? What if there is no problem? What if it's all in our head? And if we just step back and we just celebrate, and when we celebrate, people want to come around us and celebrate too.
yeah. Wow. Okay. That's amazing. Look, you've blogged about some other things that caught my eye because I've wondered, and then I'll give you specifically what you've talked about. I've wondered about what holds people back. And you're a coach, and I'll get into your coaching in a moment, but you're
Mhm.
a coach. Um, what do you suppose holds people back? And in that connection, you've blogged about nervousness and dealing with stressful emotions. Can you talk about that with us and include both of those words, nervousness and dealing with stressful emotions?
Yeah. Um, so I mentioned when my grandfather passed,
Mm,
right? So I was 5 years old and my central nervous system was on fire. Like it was, they have the fight, fright, or freeze. I was frozen. I didn't know how to express myself. I didn't have anyone to express it to because I only knew 5 year olds and
mm,
I couldn't appropriately articulate it to my parents. So I was just kind of like, I'm stuck
mm,
in this thing. And in that stuckness, it came my release. My release came through the stuckness. When I said, okay, when I calm down and perceive it correctly, things will work. Now, I didn't use perceive at the time because I was a 5 year old kid,
mm,
but I did say, I'm going to die, so I better live. Like I remember coming to that distinction on I'm gonna die. So I better live as much life as I can.
mm,
And so that's what I focused on doing. The thing that puts us in a state can also take us outside of the state. So
mm,
when you were talking about what holds people back, well, it comes down to three things. It's either their circumstances, they
mm,
think there's something wrong with the circumstance, it's other people, someone else is doing something, or it's themselves. And I live in a very holistic world, so I see it as all three. It's going to be varying circumstances, other people, and themselves.
mm,
And it's figuring out what to look at first.
mm,
Because if we're looking at it all, it's too much. It would be like if I took someone who was overweight and I just gave them a laundry list of things that they needed to do. They're going to be so overwhelmed. They're going to be like, screw this, I can't do it. But if I give them one thing that they can do consistently and build a habit on that, and then another thing, and then momentum is working on their side.
mm.
Our brains are our best friends and our worst enemy. So when we use it appropriately, we skyrocket. When we use it incorrectly, it becomes like our concrete boots. And when I connect with people, I connect with them in a way that listens to them
Mhm,
because their concrete boots are theirs. If
mhm.
I say, let me take these off of you right now, we're not doing this anymore. Some may take that, but some are so comfortable in their concrete boots, they'll literally put them back on, not even knowing that they're doing it.
Yeah,
Just like, oh, it just doesn't feel right.
yeah.
This feels better. I know this. I know what this feels like. So I listen really closely to people and I remind them, because that's all I'm doing, reminding them of the power that they do have instead of constantly reminding them and them reminding themselves of the powers that they don't.
Right. Yeah, I get you. I get you. Along with that, along with what you've blogged and spoken about, one thing that you've talked about was, random acts of kindness, racks.
Yeah.
And I was curious about when did when did this show up for you in your life? And then when did you, or why did you begin practicing racks, random acts of kindness? And then the value of that.
So what's so crazy? I know what it feels like to do right by people.
Hmm.
I know what that feels like because I've had people do right by me. And so I just did right to do right. And in doing so, it became this random thing. But then I quickly realized, like, wait a minute, there is nothing that's random. Like, there's a reason why everybody does what they do. And when I started looking back at my journey and who I was and how I showed up, I started seeing, holy crap, when I'm healing, it it heals others. And when I heal others, I heal myself. It goes both ways. It always has and it always will. We just have to learn the lesson either through teachers or through ourselves or a combination of the two.
Uh-huh. That's awesome. I tell you, I'm gonna remember that. Random acts of kindness,
Yeah.
racks. Okay.
I'll share another story with you real quick
Oh
if you'd
yes,
like.
please. Yes.
So I was driving and this homeless guy gets in the way of my car
Mm,
and I have to swerve to not hit this guy. And I'm mad, right? Like I am just pissed. So I go to park my car and I'm going to go yell at this random homeless guy. And I go out of my car and I reset because I'm like, what are you doing? Like I was not coming from a place of empathy. I was coming from a place of anger. And I reset and I ended up getting a water bottle because I had a water bottle with me. And I went to go talk to the guy. I'm like, hey, I almost hit you with my car. Um, what's going on? You okay? He's like, oh man, I'm out of it. I'm tired. I'm dizzy. Didn't even see you pass.
mm,
And I go, oh man, are you thirsty? He goes, yeah, I could definitely use a drink.
mm,
And so I gave him my water bottle. Now, I felt so good from going through that whole process, but I bring up that we are going to be tested sometimes.
mm,
And it's up to us to say, like, okay, how can I reset faster? Because maybe I maybe I wouldn't have reset if I didn't practice it as long as I did.
mm.
Maybe I would have gone off on the guy and I can't believe blah 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 blah, and then gone about my day and not have been transformed through the process.
Yeah.
But I got to transform through the process because I had the reset in the right moment. And honestly, I felt amazing in
Mm.
being able to provide for that guy who wasn't feeling so good.
Right. Isn't that something? You
Yeah.
serve and then you benefit.
Mhm.
And let me ask, so is there a difference then between reality, the homeless guy was, this guy was in having a difficult time, and then the story which you're telling yourself about this guy. There is a is there a difference? Is there a difference? There is a difference, isn't there?
That is such a great question. And there absolutely is a difference. We and perception is our reality. Like that's the crazy part about it all, is because the way we perceive it is going to be the reality that we see.
Yeah.
And what I always do to remind people, we are loving beings. It's in our nature. It's literally in our nature, and we blossom when we do it. but
Yeah.
we have to have a reason to see the thing that we need to see to blossom through the
Yeah,
process.
it's great. I mean, look at you, former fighter, and you got laughter and joy. That's something
Yeah,
that it's amazing just to behold. Now, but
yeah.
you are a business coach, competitive edge specialist. Oh, by the way, how did you come to that name for your business, Sparks, competitive edge specialist? How did that
Yeah,
come?
so I came that up with that. A good friend of mine, he passed away, rest his soul.
Mm,
Uh, but yeah, Vincent Molina and me got together with competitive specialist, and we may. Well, I'm not gonna say we, but I may even change it just because I did talk to him further, and he got to understand me at an even deeper and richer level as we went through the process. Um, and I don't know what it's going to be. I kind of have to play through it, and when I feel it, I'll feel it. I say this because what I really do, I call myself the glue to
mm,
people. And there's two types of audiences that I work with very, very well. And I know I have to brand just to one audience because it's going to speak powerfully to that audience. But I'm about courage and empathy. So I know how to stand for what I stand for, but I also know how to have the empathy necessary to support other people on their journey. And I started seeing like, all right, you have your courageous types who are not very empathetic at all. Like they'll just run through people comfortably and easily, and that's what they do. And then you have your over empathetic types who don't have the courage to speak out or stand up or share their truth. And so what I do is I help the overly empathetic balance that out with more courage, and the overly courageous balance it out with more empathy.
mm,
Because the overly courageous can do amazing if they're talking to their empaths, essentially. If you start getting those people to actually run with your mission with you instead of you just running your mission by yourself because you know how to do it,
mm,
um, they will provide major, major value into your business and into your culture.
mhm. Okay, you mentioned branding, that you brand to your tribe, your group as well. But
Mhm.
first, what is your brand, and then secondly, who are you branding for?
Yeah, yeah. So my brand is, what do people see when they see me? What do they think about when they think about me? The people that it's for, it's specifically, and I'm still working on it, but it's your high performers. They know how to perform at a high level, and they're actually really good at doing it by themselves. And in doing it by themselves, they have basically sucked all of their time and their freedom away because they're doing it all by themselves. So what I do is I basically cut that ball and chain
Yeah.
so that they can work on their business instead of being forced to be in their business. So they
Mm,
can live life on their terms. They can go to the golf course if they want to. They can hang out with their family if they want to. I do want to serve family oriented people specifically, but I want to get people their time back, especially the creatives,
mm,
because when they have time, they actually look to serve more. It's very, very cool. It's not the other way around. I'm looking for those impact driven individuals who want their time back so they can impact more people and serve more people.
I love it. I love it. As a coach, you are an executive coach, executive business coach, but you offer that you are a transformational coach. Now, I see that as a powerful word. What do you
Yeah.
mean by it? That you're a transformational coach?
Yeah, yeah. So, as human beings, some of us will go through transformations and some of us never will.
Hmm.
The people that never have, and I almost want to take that back. They do, but they do it in response to something. I like being very proactive in my life,
Hmm.
so I want to transform on my terms and in my way. And transformation to me means I'm here. I want to be here. How do I close the gap?
Hmm.
Transformation just speeds the gap. It closes the gap faster.
Hmm.
And that's how I look at people when I'm talking with them, just to see like, hey, what do you want in your life? and why do you not have it in your life yet? And what can we do to make that happen faster?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I get it. Now, in your work, you've also talked about and written about the power of six. Um, would you give us some context for that and what and help us understand what you mean by that?
Yeah. Um, so when I got done fighting, I ended up going into speaking. And I had a speaking coach, and I went through my first speech, and it was all over the place. Like it was just like do this and this and this over here. And I was just it was a bunch of inspirational stuff everywhere, but it wasn't targeted or focused or deep, right? And I spoke with my speaking coach about it, and she goes, "Okay, well, sit down and get very, very specific of the steps and the transformations you've taken people through." And so when I sat down and I thought through it and I put it together, I'm like, it used to be five. It actually started with five. I'm like, they go through these five things. And later on, I was like, wait a minute, they're not going through five things, they're going through six things. It's six things. And then I realized even deeper, holy crap, it's not linear. It's secular. So it's a cycle. And then you don't know where you're at in the cycle. You might need this or you might need this piece. The principles and philosophies that I've been using as a fighter, I've been using when I was overweight to getting in shape. I've been using to create a business that I can leverage and have systems so I don't always have to be working in the business. I can work on the business.
Yeah.
So it goes down to these feelings. Like we are driven by feelings. And so the first one is clarity, confidence, and commitment. When an individual is clear, their confidence goes up. And when they're confident, they're more committed. If you're not confident in something, you'll find a million reasons not to commit to that thing. Like, oh, my kid's sick. Oh, I'm really tired. Something's wrong with my foot. But if you're confident, all of a sudden your commitment goes up. And so it's those three pieces. I call it the three C's. And then it's having a game plan. And it's knowing what to measure and why you're measuring it. Like, okay, well, what are we measuring and why are we measuring it? Because if I don't know what I'm measuring or why I'm measuring it, then I'm not going to have any emotional attachment to it. And without the emotional attachment, I'm just going to lollygag and just like, oh, I'll get to it when I get to it.
Yeah.
And then the third, which I'm really, really strong in, is passionate action. And that's just do the thing you want to do. And what gets people in trouble is they're like, well, okay, I want to watch Netflix. I'm like, does that align with the goal that you're looking to create? So you got to ask yourself that question. There were times I would run hills and I'm not thinking to myself, like, oh man, I want to go run some hills, but I'm thinking about the outcome that I'm going to get. I'm thinking of getting my hand raised. I'm thinking of being the best me that I can be. I'm thinking of getting in amazing shape. And so therefore I'm going to run those hills passionately. Not like, oh, let me half-ass these hills so I can get some half-ass results and not really get the thing that I want.
Yeah.
And so the fourth, unshakable faith. And it's like, I'm like, holy crap. Faith is something that should be practiced not just in front of everybody, because that's when it's easy. We're like, all right, we're all sitting together. Let's have faith together. But what are you doing when you're not with everybody else? Because each piece is important anyway. So you might as well go all in when you're with people and when you're not with people. And so it's like, okay, what is faith to you? Because you're gonna need it. I and I know Stephen, you know about this.
Yeah.
There's a place where you get tested and you're like, crap, I didn't see that coming. It's the practices that we do when others are not around that are going to show up. And
Mhm.
that our habits are going to show up.
Yeah.
And the fifth is extreme responsibility. What are my resources? Where am I resourceful? What can I do? What can't I do? Where am I at? Do I have the capacity? All of those things, looking within, reflecting, looking without. What do I have inside? What do I have outside? What am I working with?
Mhm.
And so it was that. And my last one, and was super cool because I said it's a circle. The last piece is greatness within,
Mm,
really feeling greatness within yourself. And what's crazy to me, so me and my wife, we've been married for 15 years. We'll be married 16 in March.
congratulations.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Everything's a circle, right? Connectedness. The beginning and the end are the most important pieces to get all the other pieces working together. So I usually start with, okay, what does greatness mean to you?
Mm,
What does that mean to you? Because once you get that and you're clear, confident, and committed in it, the other pieces are going to fill themselves in.
mm,
And that's the strategy. That's the process. We have a goal, and then we have the outcome, and then we have the strategy in the middle that needs to be filled in.
mm,
And so I usually start with, what does greatness mean to you?
mm,
And why does it mean that?
mm. Yeah, I like it. And I'm glad that you enumerated these here on this podcast. You
Yeah,
know,
absolutely.
yeah, you've also touched upon something, and I want to come back to this, but I want to know more about how you work with people. You touched upon it just a moment ago, but
Hmm.
I want to look at, the infrastructure of it, especially since COVID. How do you work with people? How can people work with you? And then secondly, when a new client comes in, how do you work with that person? If you get the two parts, I would love for you to just kind of give us a glimpse into it. You don't have to go too far with it, but
Yeah,
how do
yeah.
you?
So when I work with a person, I do a lot of active listening, and I ask a lot of questions because I want to know where they're at and what they're doing. One thing that I saw that kind of bugged me in the coaching industry specifically is they make it about the person. Like, this is what I've just seen. So this is my reality. But some coaches will point to the person and say, you have to be responsible. You have to be dedicated. You have to do this. You have to put in the reps. And then there's other people who have felt like they have been burnt by coaches because they feel the coach didn't actually listen to them or take the time to ask those questions. So what I do, I'm not looking to sign a person up the first time I meet them. I want to even know if it's a good fit. I want to understand them, their goals, their dreams, their desires, what they want to become, why they want to become it, what's stopping them from doing it. I want to know all of those things so that I can see, like, okay, is what I have a good match and a good fit for them? Because I want it to be a win-win. I'm not winning when a person's paying me and they don't feel like they got the thing they came to go get. But we definitely win when they pay me and then they feel they've gotten 10 times more because now they are a fanatic. And
Yeah,
having fanatics is cool on
yeah,
both ends.
yeah, yeah. So, given COVID, do people have to come to you? How can people, so let's say someone wants to connect with you tomorrow, what do they do?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm actually online. You can connect with me in Messenger. You could, if you get good enough, you can ask for my phone number. But I'm gonna ask some questions before I just give that out too. But yeah, connect with me there or connect with me on LinkedIn. Those are gonna be the best ways to do it. Don't email me. I'm just gonna be honest and straight. I'm not a great emailer. Uh, but my other two sources, I get back to those very quickly and concisely.
Yeah. I'm persuaded that you are a coach and that you are a transformational coach.
Mhm.
Question: how did you know that you were a coach and a transformational coach?
Yeah, that's a good question. Was super funny. Everyone kept calling me coach. So I said to myself, like, well, I should probably get certified in this. And
Mm,
when I got certified, I'm like, holy crap, I've been doing this since I was a kid. But yeah,
mm,
yeah, that was the big kicker for me, which, like, when I wanted to become a fighter, I'm like, oh, I want to be a fighter, so let me go do this stuff and see if I'm any good at it. Right?
mm,
And I went through that process. I never thought of myself as I'm a coach. I just did what I did. And then I realized, holy crap, that's what I'm doing is I'm coaching people through their process.
uh-huh. That's fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
Clifford Starks, it has been a joy talking with you today. in 2023, I'm going to reach out. I'm going to try to get you back because there's some other
Yeah.
spiritual stuff that I really want us to dig more into.
Yeah,
But
I appreciate your time and you give me amazing, amazing questions to answer. So appreciate that.
very good. You've been listening to the Possibility Action Network podcast. Our guest today has been Clifford Starks. I'm your host, Stephen Middleton. Until next time, good day